My name is Emily. My dad runs several businesses, and being the daughter of a president, I grew up in a very affluent household which perhaps allowed me to develop a very laid-back personality. However, my parents never judged me for it and raised me with plenty of love. Currently, I'm working at my father's company, but before that, I was always involved in animal-related work. I felt it was time to become independent, so I decided to find a job. I was supposed to work in a field related to animals, but due to a sudden vacancy, I ended up working temporarily at my father's company. I keep it a secret that I am the president's daughter because I don't want to be judged differently, and only a few people know about it.
Good morning, Emily.
Morning, Dad.
How's work? It's almost a year now.
I've gotten used to it, and everyone's so kind, so I'm enjoying it.
That's good to hear.
Oh. Don't forget our promise.
Of course, I'll make sure to increase the staff with the next HR changes so you can lead.
The promise with my dad was to have someone else take over my position during the next HR transition. Once the handover is complete, my responsibilities will end. I plan to pursue a job I love. Even though it was my father's company, working there as an office worker made me realize it's not quite the right fit for me, so I'm thinking of starting my own business. I'm looking forward to HR to find someone for my position, so I can prepare for this. My parents have always known about my love for animals and have allowed me to interact with many of them. Ever since I was a child, I had little interest in studying, and my test scores in elementary school were always dismal. However, seeing how I could easily befriend any animal, my parents quickly recognized this as my strength and never nagged me about my studies. Instead, to develop my strength, they would make time to gift me experiences at animal-related events and places. I have an older brother, 2 years older, who is the complete opposite of me. He loves studying. He was interested in management and said he would take over our father's company since middle school, so I think my father was also reassured knowing the company would be in my brother's hands. I was truly raised freely and without constraints. While I managed to endure compulsory education, school was my only source of stress. The pressure to conform with everyone else was hard for me. As a child, I was really bad at forming relationships with people and spent most of my time with animals. I tearfully told my parents that I didn't want to go to college. They weren't surprised and calmly began to talk to me. They said it was okay not to go to college, but they wanted me to promise that I would never stop learning. Instead of going to college, I started volunteering at a ranch that cares for retired racehorses. My interest in horses began in middle school, influenced by a book I read. They say that horses can understand when people are suffering, and they possess the power to heal. Intrigued by the mysterious abilities of horses, I eagerly began volunteering. I became captivated by the charm of horses, much more than I had imagined. Horses are truly mysterious creatures. If I'm ever slightly down, they come close and gaze at me with gentle eyes. It's as if they're asking, "Are you okay?" I loved having heart-to-heart conversations with horses. The people I met there were all so kind, and even I, who was terrible at socializing, could fit in. It seems I can connect with people who love animals. After volunteering there for 3 years, I then started volunteering at an animal shelter. Not only dogs and cats, but also birds and many other unusual animals were being cared for there. While the circumstances varied, initially seeing the injured animals was tough, and it almost broke my spirit. However, when a fellow volunteer told me, "Our job is to heal these animals' wounded hearts and help them find new families," I realized that although it's hard to see the injured ones, there is a lot of hope in looking ahead, and I grew to love this work. At the point they were rescued, these animals were safe. Realizing this, I felt motivated to protect them with all my might, leading me to propose various ideas and take initiative. It was a significant event for me. I was terribly afraid of expressing my opinions because I had often been told that my views were strange, which made me fear speaking up. I lost my energy because I was vaguely fighting such fears, and I began to hate the idea of school. It's not that they didn't like me or that they were harassing me. People around me were kind, but I was afraid to be my true self, making me feel uncomfortable. It was the animals that enabled me to start sharing my ideas and act proactively. No matter what others thought, I wasn't afraid if it meant creating a better environment for the animals. After working there for 4 years, I believe my interpersonal skills greatly improved. I learned how to communicate with people on equal terms and gained a lot of confidence in myself. Most people probably learn this during their school years, but I was clumsy and took a little longer. However, it all worked out in the end. Since I've always wanted to run my own animal shelter and needed work experience, and I was also thinking about becoming independent from my parents, entering the workforce became my next goal. This led to me joining my father's company, which has been my life journey so far. While my path has been somewhat different, thanks to my supportive parents, the trauma of being different was minimal, and I successfully stepped into the working world. Everyone at my current job is really nice, and even though it's not the field I want to be in, I enjoy working there every day. I started with the same salary as any other new employee, without any special treatment despite being the president's daughter. Initially, only my father and one other person in this company knew that I was the president's daughter. In fact, while everyone is nice, there's one particularly troublesome person. Even though my people skills have improved than before, I'm still clumsy and often unsure how to handle situations, especially with this person. Others do help me when they notice, but when I'm alone and confronted by this person, I can only wait silently for the time to pass. I don't want to complain to my father, it feels a bit childish to do so.
Emily, good work today. I'll be in the lounge.
Thanks.
Yeah,
I'll be there soon. He is my fiancé, Alex. He proposed on our 1-year anniversary of dating, and we're now engaged. Alex and I hit it off immediately after I joined the company and started dating soon after. We both love animals, and he's someone with whom I can feel secure and open up. Alex is the only one at the company who knows I'm the daughter of the president, and he's kept it a secret too. He even met my father shortly after we started dating, and they get along well. Unlike me, he can do his job well and is highly regarded by his boss and proud of his fiancée. I am so thankful that he values me, including the parts of me that are different. Every day I want to treat him the same way.
Hey, Emily, where are you going?
Oh. Mark, good work. I was just going on my lunch break.
Lunch break, huh? With your low education level and lack of skills, shouldn't you be working harder instead of taking breaks?
Well,
It's really troublesome that you can't even hold a conversation.
this unpleasant person is Mark. He's the head of my department, and he always makes snide remarks about my lack of formal education. Perhaps my slower pace at work annoys him, but I always complete all my tasks within the allotted time and don't make many mistakes. It feels completely unfair to be treated so harshly just for not having a degree. Feeling a bit down, I head to the lounge where Alex is.
Emily, over here.
Hey, Alex, good work today.
What's wrong? You seem less cheerful than before.
I ran into Mark.
Did he say something again? Shall I have a word with him?
No, please don't. I don't want to make a fuss over it. Alex is always on my side. I think he would talk to Mark if I asked, but I don't want to worry my father or escalate the situation, so I end up just venting without taking any action.
By the way, did you see the email from Mark?
Email? No, I haven't. Did he send me one?
It's about the company's 10th anniversary party. He's organizing it.
A party, huh? Dad would be pleased.
I know you're not fond of parties, but let's go for your father's sake, okay?
Yeah.
I guess I will. I think I'll be leaving the company soon anyway, so I'll attend this time.
Great. I'll forward the email to you just in case.
Thanks. After lunch break, I returned to my desk to check my email. There was no detailed email from Mark. Perhaps it was a mass email, and he forgot to include me. I try not to think too much about it and check the email Alex forwarded. The party is next month on a Saturday at a hotel near the company. Everyone is excited and planning to dress up, so I consider booking a hair appointment. With that thought, I get back to work.
Are you still working on that? Can't you finish it up sooner?
Sorry, but I'm done with this part, so here you go.
Normally, employees prioritize work according to what their supervisor needs, right? You lack consideration.
I'll keep that in mind for next time. I gulped and replied yes, but I had doubts because I was working according to the priorities I had been taught, so I checked with the on-the-job trainer who had been teaching me the job. It turned out I was doing it correctly after all. While I understand that creating a conducive environment for the supervisor is part of an employee's job, this situation felt particularly unjust and it made me angry. That's why I hate dealing with people. Back at my desk, I muttered to myself in frustration. I was also upset with myself for not being able to navigate social interactions as smoothly as others, or to respond and settle matters effectively.
Emily, hey, you finished work. Did you see the email?
Alex, thanks for forwarding it.
Yeah.
I saw it.
What's wrong? Did the manager say something again?
Well,
Yeah.
I really struggle with people. I wish I could be with horses.
Emily, you're human too. How about we go horseback riding on our next date?
Oh, I'd love that. Yes, please.
Then it's settled.
Thanks, Alex.
You're welcome.
Alex really knows how to handle me well. Alex knows how to lift my spirits and always tries to keep me smiling. It's rare for me to open up to someone this much, so my parents were initially surprised, but ultimately they were thrilled about the engagement. I haven't announced my engagement at the company yet, but plan to do so after the 10th anniversary party, including telling my manager. I hope I won't hear any mean comments again. Such negative thoughts sprout easily in me. The following week, Alex kept his promise and took me horseback riding. Horses are truly wonderful. I felt so healed and strongly desired to work with animals again. That evening, we planned to have dinner with my parents at my childhood home, so we went there together. We're home.
Good evening.
Oh, you're here. Sorry for the trouble, Alex.
Not at all. I've been looking forward to it.
Dad, were you at work today?
No, I took the day off.
I saw dress shoes by the entrance.
I went out to buy a shoe for the 10th anniversary party today.
Another suit.
Now, let's go inside.
My father has a habit of buying suits for every occasion, filling our home's closet with his collection. He likes to wear a different suit for each event as a way to commemorate the occasion. Seeing this makes me suddenly realize just how wealthy our family is. I can't help but think it's wasteful to buy a new suit every time. I always end up grumbling, and my dad soothes me. When will you ever have enough suits, Dad?
It's not about having enough, you know. It's about the memory of the occasion. I even keep my suit from your baby dedication ceremony.
That's actually quite nice.
Hey, Alex.
Sorry, but it does sound nice, like having photos of memories.
You get it, Alex. It's a sensation of memories that only I can understand.
Then at least buy just a tie. Buying a whole suit every time seems too much.
I guess you still don't quite understand, Emily. Anyway, you two are coming to the party, right?
Of course, we'll celebrate without letting anyone realize your connection to Emily's father.
Right, our relationship is official at work, but no one knows about Dad and me yet. It's a bit nerve-wracking.
You won't be sitting at the same table, so just smile and you'll be fine.
Exactly. As Alex says, there's no need to be overly conscious. Let Alex support you.
Please, Alex.
I've got this. I'm looking forward to it.
At my family home, it's always like this, with Alex and my dad teaming up, and my arguments hardly ever prevail. But their interaction is so natural that I end up smiling too, and eventually, the conversation shifts, leading to a completely different conclusion than I initially anticipated. Well, it's not like we were discussing anything major, so it's okay. Men are curious creatures. On the day of the 10th anniversary party, I went to the beauty salon in the morning and, unusually, had makeup done. I like dressing up, but I'm terrible with makeup, usually settling for just foundation and lipstick, so having a full makeover was exciting and felt nice. I wonder if Alex will be surprised. When I returned from the salon, my dad was still lounging in his casual clothes. Dad, you're still in your loungewear. Are you sure about the time?
I'll be going about an hour after you. Wow, Emily, you look sharp.
Sharp, huh, thanks. Dad was relaxed, saying his chauffeur would pick him up later. I left a bit early for the venue because I wasn't used to walking in heels. It took about 30 minutes to get to the station where I was meeting Alex, so I quickly changed and left the house. Alex.
Emily, you look great in that dress. You did your makeup today. Pretty.
Thanks, I feel a bit embarrassed.
You're always pretty, but it's nice to see a change like this, ho.
Seeing Alex a bit shy was adorable, making me think I should learn more about makeup. We usually don't hold hands when around company colleagues, so Alex just gave me a wry smile as I wobbled in my heels. What a pity that he was so pleased with the makeup.
Are you okay? Want to walk barefoot to the venue?
I wish, but then I'd run my stockings. I'll manage.
It's quiet now, so hang on to me.
I decided to lean on Alex's arm before reaching the venue, feeling a bit embarrassed. I really want to improve my feminine skills. Lost in these self-deprecating thoughts, we quickly arrived at the venue.
Emily, I'm going to use the restroom. Can you check in first?
Got it. Wobbling, I searched for the registration desk. It seemed our company's event was in the furthest room. Instead of the organizing manager, a hotel staff member was at the reception. As I started to check in and gave my name, the receptionist began to look unsettled. Apparently, my name wasn't on the list. They hurried off saying they'd check immediately. Just my luck. I waited blankly at the reception when the manager and the hotel staff returned from inside.
Oh, this is about you. Don't worry, There's no seat for you, so it's fine. This way, the number of seats inside should match the list.
With that, Mark quickly headed back to the venue, leaving the hotel staff awkwardly returning to the desk. I was momentarily confused by what had happened, but instinctively, I called out to Mark. Mark.
What does the uninvited guest want?
What exactly is going on here?
What do you mean?
Despite my seriousness and desperation, Mark responded with a smirk. I struggled to contain my irritation and try to understand the situation. Why is my name not on the list?
Why would it be? Obviously. Because there's no seat for you inside.
Why is that?
What do you mean why? I don't recall inviting you.
But isn't it strange that all employees were invited except me?
Did you even receive an invitation email?
Invitation email.
Everyone invited got an email detailing today's event. You didn't receive it, did you? How embarrassing to show up at a party you weren't invited to. I'm speechless.
The email I thought was missing due to an error was deliberately not sent by Mark. Realizing this, I nearly panicked to the point of hyperventilation, but managed to keep my composure. This was clearly harassment. Why wasn't I invited?
Don't you understand?
I don't.
Talking to you is so frustrating. You're slow in speaking and acting, bad at picking up hints, and not considerate. That's why I dislike people with low education.
But that's not relevant right now, is it? I was on the verge of tears from frustration at that moment, but refused to cry in front of him, though I probably looked tearful. But I'm sure I must have had tears in my eyes.
It's very relevant. This is our company's 10th anniversary. Wouldn't it be embarrassing to have someone with a high school education like you there? The president would surely prefer to celebrate with only the capable employees.
So, the president said that?
You don't get it, do you? That's why I said you're slow on the uptake. Unlike you, I can read between the lines and know what the president expects. There's no place for someone with a high school education like you here. Go home.
I understand. I don't agree, but if that's truly what the president wants, I should trust you, Mark.
You got quiet when I mentioned the president. Of course. Trust me, I'm educated and smart. Now go home.
Excuse me. I struggled to hold back the rising frustration and tears. As I turned and walked towards the exit, tears began to fall. I needed to contact Alex. Where could he be? With only 7 minutes to the party's start, I wondered if he had already gone inside. Sorry, Dad. I felt terribly guilty for feeling like an embarrassment at my father's company's anniversary party. I must be unfit for the professional world. I'm sorry for being such an embarrassing daughter. I thought as I cried.
Emily, what happened?
Oh, no.
Let's calm down and step outside.
Meeting Alex by chance, I felt a sense of relief and my tears wouldn't stop. We stepped outside, and I drank the beverage Alex had bought for me. After my breathing, which had been close to hyperventilating, settled a bit, I told him everything. I'm sorry, it seems I'm really not cut out for this corporate world.
You shouldn't be apologizing, Emily. Nobody thinks that way, and even if they did, what the manager did was harassment.
But you must be embarrassed to have a girlfriend like me.
Not a girlfriend, a fiancée. And I'm not embarrassed at all. I'm proud of you.
Thank you, Alex. What should I say to Dad? He must be so disappointed.
Emily, you will attend the party. Leave it to me.
But how can I face everyone after being made to cry like that?
It's okay, trust me. I have a plan. Just promise me one thing. When you enter the venue, do it with confidence. So, go to the bathroom and fix your makeup. I'll wait for you.
Okay. I understand. Following Alex's advice, I headed to the bathroom. With just 3 minutes to go before the start, I didn't want to go, but I trusted Alex. What's going to happen? My heart won't stop racing. After quickly touching up the makeup around my eyes, I step out of the bathroom and see Dad.
Emily, I heard everything from Alex. It must have been tough, but it's okay now.
Your father knows everything. Emily, when your name is called, come into the venue. Remember the promise. Enter with confidence. Okay.
My father hugged me, and I nearly cried again, but I held back to not ruin my freshly fixed makeup. Alex seemed to have something in mind, and though I was confused, I decided to follow their lead. As the party started.
Hello everyone. Thank you all for gathering here. I am Mark, serving as the organizer and MC for today.
Standing outside with my father. I was anxious to find out what was going to happen next. Hearing Mark's cheerful voice from inside sent shivers down my spine.
Our company has reached its 10th anniversary thanks to everyone's hard work. As a department head, I, Mark, have been leading a fulfilling life thanks to the support of our excellent employees.
Applause echoed from the venue. I wondered how Alex felt listening to this.
We will soon have a special address from Mr. Robert. And today, by special request of Mr. Robert, we have a surprise guest joining us. So please look forward to it. Now, let's welcome the president. Everyone, please applaud.
As applause filled the room again, my father entered the venue. Standing outside alone, my anxiety grew, and my legs trembled. It's okay, it's going to be okay. I whispered to myself like a mantra, waiting for the moment to come. Soon, my father began his speech. It was soothing compared to Mark's voice. It's natural, I suppose, since he is my father.
Thank you all for gathering today. And thank you, Mark, for planning and executing this event. Please allow me a moment to speak.
My father was expressing superficial thanks to Mark. Even though I know it's not heartfelt, it still makes me feel uneasy. I kept chanting my mantra, hoping for a deeper meaning.
I run several companies, and none of them could have grown without your hard work. I want to express my gratitude once again. Thank you. There's something else I want to say. Family is the most important thing to me. I believe everyone here has family, friends, and loved ones who are precious. Please cherish them. I couldn't be in this position without my family. People who don't value others won't be valued in return. It may seem obvious, but some people seem to forget this recently. As the head of this company, I want to make it clear. I am immensely grateful for my family and will do anything to protect them.
The crowd erupted in cheers and applause. I was deeply moved by my father's speech. I'm the one who should be grateful for raising such an unconventional daughter with care. Now it should be my turn to repay the favor, yet I've caused more trouble and worry.
Thank you. Remember, your colleagues at work are also your companions. Never intentionally hurt them. If I find anyone doing so, I will take strict action. Understood. Today is a special day, and I want to introduce someone who has been a driving force behind my work and who stepped in to fill a sudden vacancy in our company. Without this person, we wouldn't be celebrating today. Please, come inside.
The room buzzed with excitement, then burst into loud applause and cheers. Mark began to speak into the microphone as if to address the crowd.
Now, let me introduce you. Please welcome the president's daughter.
The doors of the venue opened. Guided by the staff, I enter the venue. My legs trembling. It's okay, it's okay. While chanting to myself like a spell, I kept my promise to Alex by holding my head high and walking straight ahead, looking towards where my father was.
What?
Thank you for the sudden invitation today, and I want to express my gratitude to everyone who has supported my father daily. The venue erupted in surprise and uproar, with exclamations heard throughout. My colleagues, who had been friendly, were in shock. Alex looked at me proudly, nodding in approval. I apologize for keeping silent until now. Thanks to everyone who treated me well without knowing I am the president's daughter, I have enjoyed my work every day. I managed to persevere through the year because of everyone but one who patiently taught me, including my on-the-job trainers. Before bowing, I glanced at Mark. He was aware of his snide remarks and now pale and shocked that I was the one entering as the president's daughter. Once I started speaking, I couldn't stop. As my father mentioned earlier, we should value our colleagues. I believe the workplace, where we spend most of our day, should be comfortable. But I have been harassed constantly throughout this year. I apologize for bringing this up at a celebration, but today, I reached my breaking point. As I was close to tears, many voices from the audience encouraged me, saying, "You can do it." With the crowd's support, I felt empowered to expose Mark. Mark, who called me a low-educated high school graduate and constantly complained despite my not doing anything wrong, and who went so far as to not invite me to today's party. Mark was at a loss for words. The venue fell silent, hanging on my every word. My father looked at me, signaling to speak freely. Alex gripped my hand, watching intently. Suddenly, you have nothing to say. Had I told you earlier that I was the president's daughter, you wouldn't have treated me this way. Your true nature was revealed because I didn't disclose it. It took me a year to speak up, but I will no longer be silent. I am ready to fight this thoroughly. After a brief silence, the room erupted into a standing ovation. Because everyone has been supporting me behind the scenes, they are aware of the situation. They agreed with me because I spoke up about it.
Fight? What do you mean?
We'll take it where it needs to go.
That, Mr. Robert. This is just a small misunderstanding.
Emily, you did well. Leave the rest to me.
Today, I will call him as usual. Dad. Congratulations on the 10th anniversary. The atmosphere in the venue soared, and chants of my name began to echo. It was a bit embarrassing, but seeing Mark's pale face and being part of my father's significant celebration made everything worthwhile.
I know the speech was a little out of sync with the party, but she is a clumsy girl. Please look at her warmly. Now I will conclude my speech.
After my father's closing remarks, the formalities gave way to a more relaxed buffet-style dinner. The tables were cleared away for a standing setup, so I took off my heels to join in. I enjoyed the evening meal with Dad and Alex. Many people approached to commend my bravery. Some people were surprised to learn I'm the president's daughter and approached me, but I asked them to treat me as usual.
Well, Mr. Robert, I'm terribly sorry.
What exactly are you misunderstanding?
Yes.
It's not me who should be apologizing, right? It should be Emily.
I'm really sorry.
The apology seemed reluctant, with a sullen expression. Alex and I exchanged glances and shrugged our shoulders. My father was extremely upset with Mark's attitude. What's with that attitude? Can't you treat people as equals?
Yikes, I'm sorry. I apologize.
Surprised by my father's rare outburst, Mark knelt down. The onlookers snickered and took pictures of the scene. This must have been a testament to Mark's character. No one defended him. After taking photos, everyone returned to their dinner. I didn't want to interact with Mark anymore or even see his face, so I moved to get more food and sat in a chair along the wall. Mark remained kneeling, motionless.
I'll inform you of your consequences later. Be prepared.
Please, Mr. Robert. Anything but firing me.
While Mark cried, my father went around greeting each employee, leaving him behind. After that, the party ended peacefully, and it was time to go home. I no longer needed to hide being my father's daughter, so I got a ride with him. My feet were hurting, and, of course, Alex was with us. Dad, Alex, thank you so much for today. I can't believe I was able to speak in front of all those people.
You were great.
Oh, you were magnificent. You've really grown up.
Grow up? I'm already in my 30s, you know. Actually, it was Alex who had told Mark just before that Mr. Robert wanted to bring his daughter along. Unaware that I was the daughter, Mark had prepared everything, saying he would do whatever Mr. Robert wished. Afterward, my father decided to fire Mark. Indeed, it was decided that excessive harassment and educational discrimination must not be tolerated. He would have made the same decision even if the victim had been someone else, as he explained during a company-wide meeting, ensuring everyone understood that our company does not tolerate harassment. I've never seen anyone as mean as Mark in this company, so I'm not worried. Even so, the future remains uncertain. If the current employees, who are older and more experienced, must enforce this strictly, otherwise, we might have victims again. This must be avoided at all costs. Seizing this opportunity, my father decided to conduct training on harassment and the importance of recognizing discrimination across all the companies he owns. Especially those in managerial positions are to be rigorously retrained. Meanwhile, Alex and I started preparing for our wedding. It was going to be a small ceremony with family only, but it was my dream, so we visited many places to find the perfect location, yet none felt right. Seeing me disheartened, Alex made a suggestion. It was such an incredible idea that it brought me to tears. The idea was to have the wedding at a ranch with horses. There couldn't have been a place more perfect for us. With the venue set, preparations progressed smoothly, and only the big day awaited. After the wedding, I decided to quit my job. I made up my mind to establish an animal sanctuary, a dream and goal of mine from the past. I had been saving up for this, but upon getting married and becoming independent, my father offered to finance it, telling me to use the savings for ourselves, which allowed me to start without worrying about finances, and I felt relieved. I understand that my situation is not the norm, but I am grateful for the environment I have been given and will live appreciating it. Using my own experiences, I plan to thoroughly educate the employees who will work with me, turning my past hurts into positive action. I've always somewhat hidden the fact that I am the daughter of the president, but something has changed. I wasn't born choosing to be the daughter of a president, nor am I causing anyone misfortune. I realized it's okay to redistribute the advantages I've been given to those in need, including animals. This realization has lightened my spirits and given me the confidence to communicate with others. I am the daughter of the president. So what?
At a wedding, the groom suddenly grabbed a plate of food and threw it on the floor. The sauce splattered loudly on the carpet.
Oops, my bad. Slipped my hand. Ha ha.
He said, looking down at me with a laughter, and announced to everyone,
My friend sitting here with us is a janitor. He's used to handling dirty stuff, so let's leave the cleanup to him. Please, janitor.
When I refused, the bride stood in front of me and said,
My husband called you society's trash. Ha ha. Don't you dare defy the elite trash.
Then, my wife appeared behind the bride and tapped her shoulder. With a big smile, she said,
I'll ask my dad to take away the groom's desk at his workplace.
Soon after, the bride and groom were hit with this shocking reality and collapsed to their knees. My name is Kyle Johnson, 26 years old. I lost my parents in an accident during my sophomore year of college. Overwhelmed by grief, I dropped out and was in despair. But with someone's help, I managed to recover and now work as a janitor. At 25, I married Kimberly, a banker of the same age and a graduate of a top university. She was in corporate sales at the branch, known for her agility and meticulous work, quickly improving sales performance, and was even rumored to be on the track for a female executive position.
I dream of working at the heart of America's economy.
She'd say, her eyes sparkling as she talked about her future. I always worried if someone with my education and job could make her happy. But Kimberly just laughed it off, saying such things never matters. I still remember vividly the day she tearfully accepted my proposal, as if it was yesterday. Even she had her weaknesses.
How is it?
Kimberly asked, sitting in front of me at the dinner table, intently watching me eat. The cream pasta she made, after coming home early from work and following a recipe video, wasn't great, to be honest. The pasta was overcooked, the sauce bland, and the broccoli too hard. But I was really happy with the effort she put into it, regardless of the taste. Yay, it's delicious. Trying to eat heartily without her noticing. However, Kimberly's face fell in disappointment.
Kyle, your nose swells when you lie.
She pointed out. I quickly covered my nose with my hand.
Why? I followed the recipe exactly.
Seeing her so downcast, I couldn't help but laugh.
That's mean, laughing like that.
Kimberly pouted, puffing her cheeks at me. Sorry. I just thought it was cute. Even though you're good at your job and handle everything so effortlessly, cooking is your weak spot, ho. I said. She then crossed her arms and said thoughtfully,
You know, my parents are divorced, you know. I was raised by my busy mom who didn't cook very much. We mostly had deliveries or ate out, so I guess I never got interested in cooking. In other words, it's my dad's fault I can't cook.
Looking at my wife puffing her cheeks like that, I asked her something I'd always wondered. Do you see your father, Bob, often?
Just once when I started working at the bank. We talk on the phone a few times a year.
It's better to meet when you can. You never know when you won't be able to see someone again. I said, thinking of my late parents.
Kyle.
Kimberly placed her hand over mine on the table and said, I'll think about it. That day, I was at an office building for exterior cleaning, working with Martin, a 45-year-old senior janitor. It had been a while since I worked with him. Martin is a veteran janitor with a master-level building cleaning certification. The boss trusted him the most. The day's task was high-altitude work using ropes hung from the rooftop, known as swing stage work since it's like sitting on a swing. I wasn't particularly afraid of heights, but the risk of accidents from a single mistake had me tense.
Kyle, don't slack on checking your gear. The boss specifically asked me to make sure there are no accidents involving you. We can't let Kimberly become a young widow.
Got it. I took Martin's words to heart and carefully proceeded with each task. After 5 hours, all the work was successfully completed. I was cleaning up the pylons and ropes from the restricted area when suddenly someone called my name.
Johnson.
Startled, I turned to see Brandon Miller, a classmate from the same seminar in college. Miller, I exclaimed, removing my helmet in surprise. Miller looked me up and down, then sneered.
Seriously? You dropped out and became a janitor? That's wild. Ha ha.
Miller had always been like this, judging people by appearance, job, and income, associating only if it benefited him. Not surprising, but still annoying. What about you? What are you doing now? I asked, bundling the ropes with a sense of resignation.
Me? Oh, nothing much. Just a humble bank employee.
He said, making a point to show me his suit's collar and the bank's emblem. It was a familiar badge. That badge, it's from Kimberly's bank. Miller and Kimberly work at the same bank. I couldn't hide my shock, but Miller just smirked, enjoying the moment. Tough job, huh? I've got to go, I said, and was eager to leave before causing any trouble for Kimberly at work. Then Miller added,
Oh, by the way, I'm getting married next month. Lots of old college friends will be there. You should definitely come to the reception. Everyone will be thrilled.
Hearing that, I spat in disgust in my mind. Why on earth I would bother attending a wedding like yours? But I maintained composure, especially since he was Kimberly's colleague. It seemed best to keep things neutral for now, considering the current unclear nature of Brandon and Kimberly's relationship. Congratulations. I'd love to celebrate, but unfortunately. On second look, Miller's grin widened seeing my face. He must be thinking I was too ashamed of my background to attend an elite wedding and want to make me go out of my way to make excuses for my absence. Probably planning to make me the butt of jokes. Fine, if that's how it is, I'll show up with pride. I have nothing to be ashamed of in my life. I had lost my coolness by then, and declared with a smile, I'd be happy to attend. Surprised, Miller looked at me with eyes shining, like a hyena spotting prey. His mouth twisted into a wry grin, guess coming up with some humiliation for me at the reception in front of his elite group.
Great, I'll send an invite,
he said, leaving. I watched him go, already regretting my impulsive acceptance. Later, I received the invitation from Miller.
No way. Kyle, you know Brondon she Miller.
At night, when Kimberly got home, she saw an invitation addressed to me among the mail on the table. She spoke to me as I was preparing dinner in the kitchen. He was in the same seminar at college. He says he works at the same bank as you. Did you know that?
Know it? He's my peer. He transferred to our branch at the same time as me. We're working together in corporate sales. Look,
Kimberly said, pulling out a similar invitation from her bag and showing it to me. Are we both going to the same wedding reception? I regretted my decision to attend even more after learning that Miller and Kimberly were working in the same corporate sales department at the same branch.
it's a small world. I can't believe Miller is your friend. From now on, no matter how irritating he is, I'll try to build a better relationship.
Kimberly said reflectively while eating dinner. What do you mean by that? I asked, curious.
Well, actually,
Kimberly began to tell me about her experiences with Miller. He worked in the same corporate sales department, but was arrogant, looking down on colleagues because of his family background and education. This attitude disrupted team dynamics and worsened the workplace atmosphere, negatively impacting others' work. Although Kimberly, with her top university degree and high sales performance, wasn't looked down upon, Miller seemed envious, blatantly accusing her of using her femininity to her advantage. Moreover, he had been making rough loans to clients to meet quotas, and when Kimberly gently warned him, he yelled, "Don't you dare talk back to me."
I hate to say it, but he's a terrible person. I had decided to stay away from him.
He's not my friend. I interrupted, slamming my chopsticks down in anger. I couldn't hide my anger at Kimberly's story.
Aren't you good friends, being invited to his wedding?
It's okay. He's been rotten since in college. You don't have to deal with him anymore. Sorry for causing you distress. I spat out bitterly.
Why are you apologizing? Haha.
Kimberly laughed, looking at me curiously. She seemed a bit surprised, as I usually don't show negative emotions in front of her. Right. I forced a smile, but my agitation was evident. I couldn't stand Miller's casual remarks about Kimberly, which disrespected her just because she was a woman, knowing how hard she worked every day and returning home exhausted. Kimberly wasn't someone who would use her femininity to get ahead. I knew her sincerity and straightforward nature better than anyone. I met Kimberly 3 years ago. While cleaning the floors of a large building housing several major corporations, in addition to daily cleaning, we had a contract for monthly thorough cleanings. That day was for cleaning the floors of the lobby and corridors, which required partially taping off areas to keep them walkable while using specialized equipment. The work went smoothly, and the dirty floors were quickly shining again. I love this moment of looking back at my work. Just a bit more to go. Let's keep it up. I muttered, psyching myself up. Then, a young male office worker returned from outside and passed by me. As he did, he tossed a trash bag onto the floor cleaned with detergent, saying, "Take care of this too." I picked up the bag to look inside. The trash bag he left behind was filled with leftovers from a convenience store lunch or coffee cans, probably eaten at some park during his outside work. "Hey, wait." I called after him, but he walked away without turning back. It got me mad, but held back, bearing not to cause trouble that could risk our cleaning contract. Just then, a woman snatched the trash bag from my hand and dashed off after the young man, yelling,
Wait, please.
As she chased him down, I watched in amazement as the woman confronted the man.
You should clean up your own trash. Even a kindergartner knows that.
She scolded, handing the garbage bag back to the man waiting for the elevator. Reluctantly, he accepted it and got on the elevator. The woman then ran back to me, smiling, and said,
I used to be in track and field.
I was instantly captivated by her carefree smile. It was love at first sight. We awkwardly exchanged contact information, something I had never done before in my life. This was how I met Kimberly. She's full of justice and has a straightforward way of looking at things. My wife is not someone to be belittled by a jerk like Miller. I was only worried that she would be further troubled by him. Should I cancel the wedding invitation now? No, it might be too late and cause trouble. Miller doesn't know we're married, so it might be better to act like strangers at the reception. We got married when you were at your previous branch, so no one from work should know me. I told Kimberly I didn't want to add to her troubles with my issues.
Why? Why should we hide it?
Kimberly looked puzzled, understandably unaware of the situation. To avoid some trouble, okay. Seeing my serious face, she reluctantly agreed. On the wedding day, the reception was held at a top-notch hotel in downtown with 500 guests, a grand affair. Miller's bride was a 23-year-old woman named Marilyn, the daughter of a man of wealth who owns a chain of restaurants. The VIPs, probably business associates of the bride's father, were spotted around. I was seated at the friends' table on the groom's side, while Kimberly, pretending to be a stranger as promised, sat at a bank associate's table a little away. As soon as I took my seat, I felt the cold stares of Miller's acquaintances. They started ostentatiously updating each other on their recent achievements. Major securities firms, leading construction companies, top trading companies. The names of big corporations flew around. Then, a man named Smith sitting next to me struck up a conversation.
Long time no see, Johnson. It's been what, 6 years since you left college? What are you doing now?
Smith was the only decent guy here, who, I heard, started his own IT company in college and now is a CEO. Smith, it's been a while. I'm working in cleaning and maintenance.
Smith, give it a rest.
One of the others interrupted before I could finish.
Don't you feel sorry for him? A college dropout, a janitor, sneaking among the elite. Let him be.
The others joined in, sneering and whispering loudly enough for me to hear. Bold of you to come. A disgrace to our college. Smith looked at me, confused, but I gestured to him that I was fine. As the bride and groom entered and the reception started, the attacks on me didn't stop. I was prepared as they are Miller's acquaintance, but I couldn't understand why they belittled my job so much. Smith's whisper, "Don't mind them," and his smile were my only solace. The moment came during the candle service when the newlyweds approached our table.
Johnson, thanks for coming today. Glad you could make it.
Miller said, looking down at me with a smirk. Congratulations, I said, nodding to the bride as well. The bride, Marilyn, appeared young and pretty at first glance, but there was a sense that her looks were enhanced with makeup. More notably, Her way of speaking seemed rather unintelligent.
My arm is so tired. Brandon, do it by yourself.
She whined childishly, puffing her cheeks. Her blush was overly bright, reminiscent of a doll.
Marilyn, it's almost over. Let's hang in there, okay?
Miller soothed her with a cajoling tone. The others at the table exchanged looks and chuckled. I tried to suppress my laughter as I watched. Suddenly, Miller, with a devilish, pale face, accused me, "Johnson, you just laughed, didn't you?" "No, not at all." Wondering if my inner laughter had inadvertently shown. Then Miller grabbed the plate of half-eaten food in front of me and flung it to the floor.
Oh no.
Marilyn screamed. The sauce splattered dramatically on the expensive carpet.
Oops, my bad. Slipped my hand. Ha ha.
Miller laughed, looking down at me. People at nearby tables turned their attention to us. A female staff member rushed over to clean up, but Miller stopped her.
No need to worry. My friend here is a janitor, accustomed to cleaning buildings and such. He's used to handling dirty stuff, so let's leave it to him. Please, janitor.
But asking a guest too.
The staff hesitated. Marilyn interrupted, "Just do what Brandon says," and dismissed her. I was beyond anger, just dumbfounded. Marilyn, sneering just like Miller, looked at me. "A match made in heaven. You two deserve each other," I muttered with a laugh.
What?
Miller turned to me, his face changing color. Ignoring him, I stood up and instructed the staff. "For now, as a temporary measure, use a lukewarm, damp cloth with some neutral detergent. Dab it on the stain to transfer the dirt to the cloth. It's best to get it professionally cleaned as soon as possible." Then, glaring at Miller, I said, "I'm a professional cleaner. If you want me to clean, come to my company and make a formal request." I threw my napkin on the chair and was about to leave when Marilyn blocked my way.
My husband said your society's trash. Haha. Trash shouldn't defy the elite.
I looked at her, thinking how different she was from Kimberly. When I noticed Kimberly behind the bride, Kimberly. Surprised, I saw Kimberly tap Marilyn's shoulder and say with a broad smile,
I'll have my dad remove Brandon's work desk.
Marilyn shook off her hand.
What are you talking about? That's impossible. And who are you?
Thompson, what's wrong with you, drunk? Sleep talk should be saved for bed. Mind your own business.
Miller said, trying to push Kimberly away. I quickly brushed off his hand, standing protectively in front of Kimberly. Thompson was Kimberly's maiden name, which she still uses at work. As for her real father, suddenly, the bank branch manager appeared, laughing, and the atmosphere instantly tensed up.
Your strong sense of justice must come from Bob, Kimberly.
Manager, I'm sorry you had to see that embarrassing scene.
Kimberly replied, looking mortified. The branch manager, seeing her discomfort, added,
I know you're busy, but try to call Bob sometimes. When I saw him at the main office recently, he seemed lonely.
Yes.
Kimberly responded, looking down shyly.
Manager, today, we're honored by your presence.
Miller hurriedly tried to interject, pushing me aside, but the manager ignored him and spoke to me.
Kyle, it's been a while. How is President Susan doing?
Miller gaped at me, stunned. Sorry for the late greetings, manager. My aunt is as lively as ever, working hard every day. The manager nodded and smiled, saying,
I heard she's launching a new welfare-related venture, with you as her successor. She must be excited about her work.
Miller and Marilyn looked at us, utterly confused.
Manager isn't her father.
This guy, he's not just a janitor, right?
The manager replied, looking exasperated.
You didn't know her father is Bob, the head of the Human Resources Department. And this Kyle Johnson here is the nephew of the president of Johnson Corporation, which owns several cleaning-related subsidiaries. And he's the next president. He's also Kimberly's husband.
The head of HR, the next president, her husband.
Miller panicked, stepping back with a pale face. Marilyn was also flustered.
But he was wearing work clothes, doing building cleaning.
Miller exclaimed. The manager, looking impressed, turned to me and said,
It's the president's policy that all employees involved in management, especially executives, must undergo several years of training on site. Knowing the hardships of the field is crucial for company management. Truly a remarkable company.
Turning to Miller, he continued,
Johnson Corporation is a major client of our branch. If this incident leads to a cancellation of our transactions, you'll definitely be sent out. And with the HR head's impression of you now soured, there's no saving you. Well, try your best with your lovely bride wherever you go.
The manager chuckled. I have another appointment, so I'll be leaving now, and left.
Manager, such a thing.
Miller and Marilyn hesitantly turned to us.
Thompson, Johnson,
Miller tried to speak, his face contorted with a fake smile. Sorry, Miller, but we'll be leaving now. As the next president, I need to discuss changing the main bank with my aunt, I said. Kimberly added,
And I need to call my father right away.
Miller clung to us desperately.
Please, Thompson, Johnson, we're friends, right?
Friends, ha, don't make me laugh. I brushed off his hand. You're finished. Miller collapsed to his knees, his head bowed. Kimberly and I left the scene together. Behind us, as we opened the doors to leave, Marilyn's screams echoed.
What? You're getting fired from the bank. This is a joke. Call off this wedding. I don't want to marry a man like this. Daddy, do something.
The venue erupted in chaos.
What? Stupid woman. I'm better off without you.
What did you say?
We heard them arguing and looked at each other, laughing. Leaving the hotel, we took a taxi and got off near our house at a convenience store, where we bought some takeout and beer instead of the missed full-course French dinner. We walked side by side leisurely towards our home, bathed in the sunset. It felt like a long overdue date, and it was enjoyable. Was it okay? Now everyone at the bank knows about Bob. I asked Kimberly as we paused in the middle of a small bridge over a river.
I have grown up watching my mom struggle after the divorce, so I couldn't forgive my father who was too absorbed in his work and neglected his family. That's why I worked desperately hard, choosing a general position often said to be too challenging for a woman. I vowed not to lose to men, to my father.
Kimberly said, her gaze distant. She continued,
But working at the same bank, I've come to understand the hardships my father faced. I think he had a tough time too. So now I hope to build a better relationship with him.
Leaning on the railing, she gazed at the river shimmering in the sunset, then turned to me.
I can think this way because of you. You've always been there for me, gently supporting me. Thank you, Kyle.
Her smile, tinged with the colors of the sunset, made me feel a bit shy. Let's have dinner with Bob sometime, I suggested. Kimberly nodded happily in response. Later, according to Kimberly, Brandon Miller's wedding reception turned into a disaster. It ended up in a huge fight involving not only the bride and groom, but also their parents and relatives who were initially against the marriage. The reception was, of course, called off, and the couple separated, leading to a broken engagement. As for Miller, he was transferred to a subsidiary of the bank, effectively removed from the fast track to success. Since that incident, he reportedly became much quieter, though I wondered if people could change that quickly. He'll surely show his true colors soon enough. A few years later, Kimberly was transferred to the main branch, working in the Human Resources Career Group, supporting and conducting training programs for female employees. She was actively involved in creating a work environment where women could balance child rearing and their careers, gaining media attention as a potential female executive. As for me, I completed my on-site training and was receiving full-fledged successor training under the company president.
You're starting to look good in a suit. I wish my brother and sister-in-law could see you.
Dressed in an unfamiliar suit during our rounds to clients, the president said tearfully, I spent my days accompanying her. At the end of a day, I found myself on that familiar bridge, watching the sunset. I felt particularly grateful for finding a fulfilling job. I wished I could tell my past self, who had lost his parents and dropped out of college in despair, your future is incredibly happy.
Kyle?
Startled, I turned around to see Kimberly approaching with a smile, waving her hand. Welcome back. You're home early today. She approached me, slightly embarrassed, and said,
I left work early today. Went to the hospital.
What? Are you okay? I asked, concerned. Kimberly didn't answer directly but smiled, tears in her eyes, and pulled out an ultrasound image from her bag, hiding half of her face with it.
I'm 3 months pregnant.
Overwhelmed with joy, I hugged her tightly.
We're going to be parents,
Kimberly said tearfully. Oh, how I wished I could tell my younger self. I am incredibly happy right now.
Just as the company was getting on track, the female president was framed by the management team, including the vice president, and fired from a company. I couldn't stand still seeing her, whom I greatly respect, looking so disappointed. We started the business together and were about to mark 1 year since we began from scratch when we learned that our previous company was on the verge of bankruptcy.
Who are you exactly?
It's no surprise you don't know. I've been careful to keep it a secret from you alone. Because I'm your. My name is David Miller. Currently, I work as a programmer for a company that has launched an app. I started as a contractor and am not yet a full-time employee, so I haven't fully settled into this company.
David, could you come here for a sec?
Yes, what is it?
There's something I'm curious about. Could you check it out for me?
Sure, I'm on it. Emily is the president of the app company where I work. She is quite beautiful, almost as beautiful as an actress. However, she's strict with herself and others. You can't do this, can't you use your head a bit more, or you're really useless, are the kind of sharp words I've seen her use. But, given her position as the president, I think it's natural for her to tighten up slack employees and correct the atmosphere. Still, being a female president, some male employees didn't like her intense way of speaking. I've heard male employees grumbling outdated complaints like, "Don't get cocky just because you're a woman." The fact remains that there are still employees who resent being talked down to by a female boss. I've sensed an atmosphere where being reprimanded by a beautiful woman is even more annoying. I was a bit impressed that being good-looking can sometimes work against her. There's another female executive in this app development company, Jessica, who's practically the president in terms of power, though her official title is the vice president. It turns out Emily and Jessica attended the same prestigious private university. These two alumni were classmates and hit it off in university, always sticking together since meeting. Compared to the actress like Emily, Jessica may lack in glamour. But it seems Jessica's physique is overwhelmingly more popular with men.
Our company has two great women, Emily and Jessica.
Indeed.
Which one do you prefer?
Well, that's a tough call.
I've debated in my mind about who's more attractive.
You must have a lot of free time.
I won't deny that, but hear me out.
What is it then?
As a result of my internal debate, I gave the edge to Emily.
Emily is certainly beautiful, but isn't her personality a bit harsh?
That might be true, but her face is just my type.
I prefer Jessica, man. She could be a bikini model.
I've heard conversations like this several times. In addition, Jessica tends to be more gentle with employees than Emily. Generally, people gravitate towards those who treat them kindly. No one wants to deal with harsh words unnecessarily. But probably, the two have their roles set, and they were just fulfilling them. I vaguely remember overhearing parts of their conversations.
We can't be taken lightly just because we're two women in charge as the president and vice president.
I distinctly remember these words from a conversation between Emily and Jessica. Emily is the president and Jessica is the vice president, apparently because Emily invited Jessica to start the business together. Emily became president simply because she initiated the idea, but their abilities are almost the same. The two, who were close enough to start a business together, have been at odds recently. I don't know the details. However, there was a pervasive atmosphere in the office suggesting that the two were on the verge of a fallout. I've never actually seen them arguing, but conversations among employees inevitably reach my ears.
Hey, have you heard that Emily and Jessica are both in a bad mood lately?
I've heard such talk, but I don't know the real situation.
I've never seen the two of them actually going at it either.
Right? There are rumors, but nothing direct.
But a junior employee saw them arguing in front of a taxi.
I've heard before that they had arguments.
But in the end, that was just a rumor, right?
True, I've never actually seen them fighting.
My junior wouldn't just make up a lie to tell me.
That's true, but it's worrying to hear these rumors of fights more frequently now.
Yeah. It would be better if they got along well.
I've overheard such conversations among colleagues while eating pasta in the cafeteria. Lately, there have been frequent talks about Emily and Jessica clashing, so it might be true. Just when I was thinking this, Emily called me to discuss some ideas for a new app development. She said, "Whenever you're free," so I went to the president's office after finishing my lunch. Emily usually spends a lot of time in her office, working on ideas or on her computer. So I expected her to be there, doing her usual work. But I encountered something completely unexpected. Just as I was about to knock on the door to the president's office, I heard Jessica's yelling like I'd never heard before. The voice was loud enough to hear through the door. Then I noticed the door was slightly ajar, just a few centimeters. I decided to continue eavesdropping discreetly, making sure not to be noticed. After all, I had finally caught the tail end of the rumors, and I couldn't let this opportunity slip away.
I've told you already, you are no longer needed in this company.
What's going on? I don't understand what you're saying.
Didn't I just say? You're fired.
That makes no sense. What do you mean?
You used to be praised for your intelligence, but now you can't grasp such a simple matter? You've really gone downhill.
That's because it's nonsensical, so of course I can't understand.
All right, I'll say it again, listen carefully. You've been leaking company information, haven't you?
I really don't know what you're talking about.
I don't want to suspect you of such a thing, but there are records and evidence.
Show me that evidence.
Jessica sighed deeply, her voice slightly strained as she resumed speaking.
Anyway, your dismissal can't be reversed.
What do you mean?
Because you're no longer the managing director.
That can't just be decided by you alone.
You missed the extraordinary shareholders meeting because you had other important commitments, right?
Yes. What about it? Don't tell me.
At that meeting, your role as the managing director was terminated, so now I'm the sole director.
Emily was speechless, stunned by the reality, and seemed unable to speak for a while. The silence was piercing. I wondered what expression Jessica was wearing now. Emily finally managed to say,
"No matter what I do, you won't listen to me."
That's what I've been saying from the start. Your dismissal is irrevocable.
What a thing to happen.
Jessica declared loudly, with a slight sneer in her voice as if she had been waiting for Emily's spirit to break.
There's no place for you in the company anymore. Your dismissal will be communicated to everyone in the company by the end of today.
Phew.
Just grab your belongings and leave as soon as possible.
I will.
Why don't you get some comfort from William? You're dating him, aren't you?
How do you know that?
Actually, William is my man now.
What's that supposed to mean?
You really haven't noticed, have you? He's so into me now, he won't go back to you.
Jessica said triumphantly, laughing mockingly.
Call William if you want, though he might not answer your calls.
After a while, I couldn't hear their voices anymore, and I strained my ears to listen. What was happening? Why were they both silent? As I stood there pondering in front of the door, it suddenly opened from the inside, and Emily, pale-faced, noticed me. I was caught off guard, not expecting the conversation to end and her to come out so suddenly. I turned to leave quickly, but Emily grabbed my right arm and looked at me sadly. I nodded slightly, making sure Jessica wouldn't notice. Then, I took Emily's arm and led her to my car, where no other employees were around. I sat in the driver's seat, and Emily sat in the back. Her face in the rearview mirror looked lifeless, like a shell of her former self. I doubted if anything I said would help, but I had to speak. I accidentally overheard your conversation, I said, looking at Emily's downcast face in the mirror. Not saying anything further, Emily, puzzled, finally looked up, and our eyes met in the mirror. That's when I said, I want to help you, Emily. After hearing that conversation, I just had to do something. In the end, Emily left the company, just as the vice president Jessica had planned. Honestly, I wanted to expose Jessica's lies and actions. But Emily didn't want to waste any more time on the company. They had started the company as close friends from university and led it to significant success. Being ousted from a company in such an unfair manner and having her boyfriend taken away was devastating. It wouldn't be surprising if she remained down and unable to recover for months or even years. If it were me, I'd be out of action for at least 3 months. But all my worries were unfounded for her.
There's no way I'd be crushed by something like this.
For a normal person, this would be a situation that could knock them down for a while.
That's for ordinary people, right? I'm not ordinary.
Indeed, you're as beautiful as an actress, so you're not ordinary.
That's not what I'm talking about.
I know, that was a joke.
I realize that, David. You're trying to lighten the mood.
Just please accept it honestly. Despite this banter, I was pleased to see Emily becoming lively enough to joke around in such a short time. I quit my job as a contract programmer. I just can't find the motivation to work in a place where Emily is not around. Leaving was already in my plans. I hadn't decided what to do next. However, when Emily asked if I wanted to start a business together, my decision was made instantly. Of course, having said I'd follow Emily, I was indeed ready to go wherever she went. But even I was surprised we started moving on it in just 2 weeks after leaving the previous company. Emily, it seems you worked really hard at the previous company.
So what?
Shouldn't you take a break? Maybe go on a vacation.
What are you talking about? I'm not so defeated that I'll just sit silently and look down after being unjustly beaten down.
Strike while the iron is hot.
You get it.
And so, we embarked on a new business venture together. We both became the executive directors of our new company. With Emily as the president and me as the vice president. My title didn't matter to me. I just strongly wanted Emily to make a comeback as the president. So I was happy to be working with her again.
I want to hit it big with an app that leverages all my experience and knowledge.
Indeed, the experiences you've had become part of your essence.
Yes, it might overlap with popular apps in the market, but we'll add our own twist.
Right. Originality is all about how you combine different ideas.
That's right. Then we'll turn my ideas into an app with David's expertise.
I'll do my best to meet your expectations. Emily loved to cook and was quite skilled at it. She didn't hate instant or junk food, though. Being a busy president, she often settled for pizza or burgers due to lack of time. However, I've heard her say, cooking on my day off blows away the stress. Emily was interested in a recipe app. There are already many apps out there that offer simple recipes for delicious meals in a short time. Isn't entering this app market now a bit challenging? I couldn't help but ask, but Emily was determined. So, I dedicated myself to figuring out how to encapsulate her ideas into an app. We spent an incredible amount of time making the recipes user-friendly, adjusting the layout, and ensuring users could easily and intuitively upload photos of their dishes. We even made it possible for recipe creators to easily produce cooking videos. We thoroughly researched existing recipe apps and brought Emily's challenging ideas to life with my programming skills. Our recipe app initially struggled in a crowded market. The download numbers were not growing, and we were both worried over coffee. But gradually, the strengths of our app became known, and it even reached #1 in the recipe app rankings at one point. Breaking through in such a market is tough because well-known apps have a strong advantage. Even if other apps have similar or better features, people tend to use the ones they know. Once we broke through, the potential for further success opened up. When our app reached #1 in the rankings, we celebrated with a modest meal. That meant ordering some upscale pizza and drinking beer at the office.
Has it been half a year since we left that company? We've made good progress, haven't we?
I think we've both worked really hard.
Yeah. I feel like I've thought of nothing but the app for the past 6 months.
My mind was full of figuring out how to implement those ideas. Emily and I shared a contented smile and toasted with new cans of beer. About 8 months had passed since Emily and I left the company and started our own. The download numbers for our app had stabilized, and we were receiving increasing feedback about its high quality. This, in turn, led to more downloads and paying users. Just as we were confident of more success, Emily came to me with a look of urgency. "What's going on? It's 2 a.m. I said, awakened by persistent buzzing from the intercom, obviously frustrated. Emily, unconcerned about my mood, thrust her smartphone in front of me and said, "Look at this. This
looks just like our app, doesn't it?"
The format is indeed strikingly similar.
That's not all.
Emily then explained how the app on her phone closely resembled the one we created. Isn't this a copyright infringement?
It's designed right on the edge, barely avoiding copyright violation.
But still, the concept and content look the same.
Yes, exactly. Which company is behind this?
Emily suddenly fell silent, and I immediately understood. It was the company Jessica runs, the one we left. Taking advantage of our small company size, Jessica must be planning to crush us by capitalizing on our app idea. Why is Jessica going so hard against you? They used to be close friends.
I don't know, but...
Emily hesitated to continue. Just say it. You seem to have an idea of the cause. She started to speak in a low voice.
Jessica began to develop a complex towards me, feeling angry that no matter how hard she tried, she could never surpass me.
Did Jessica tell you that directly?
Not directly, but William, the guy she took from me.
So, he didn't know Jessica well at that time.
Probably. If she had been plotting against me since then, I can only take my hat off to her.
Jessica's company's app was ranking higher than the one Emily and I made. Looking into it, they had spent a significant amount on advertising. Since the app was alright payoff of my work, I understood why it quickly became popular once it was known.
We can't win this. The difference in capital is too much.
Emily, with a resigned expression and tears welling up in her eyes, told me.
Continuing to update the same app will only lead to it being stolen in the end.
Eventually, tears streamed down her face, and she collapsed to her knees. I knelt down with her, took her hands, and looked straight into her eyes, saying, "It's okay, Emily, can you leave everything to me?" Since the discovery of the app plagiarism, I had completely overhauled our app. I used advanced programming techniques to ensure that even if Jessica's company tried, they couldn't replicate our work. While keeping the interface the same, I improved usability, startup time, and graphics resolution, pouring in the best of my abilities. Thanks to these improvements, our app's user ratings soared within days, and Jessica's company, which copied our app, received a flood of complaints. Their app, being too similar to ours, was mistaken for ours and criticized for slow startup times and poor graphics. Eventually, Jessica's company was overwhelmed with complaints, and it was even suggested that they bring out their programmer to fix things faster, implying a desire for my expertise. In her humiliation, Jessica herself must have called me. Naturally, I hung up immediately. When Emily heard about the rapid and impressive updates to our app and Jessica's situation, she asked,
"Were you always this amazing?"
Then, I revealed to Emily that we had actually met a long time ago. We first encountered each other during my middle school days. Not in a romantic context, but when Emily was a student teacher doing her practicum at my school. At that time, I was living aimlessly, without any motivation or passion. I was just living because the days kept coming, feeling a sense of void in the meaningless routine. During that time, Emily, who was a student teacher, taught us programming. It was a middle school beginner's course, but I was more captivated by Emily's beauty than the subject itself. Enticed by her, I paid attention to the programming lessons and tried it out as instructed. After practicing a bit, I realized that learning programming allowed me to create my own worldview. If I assembled the programming language correctly, it executed tasks like magic. That's when I became hooked on programming. I dragged out an old computer at home and started learning from the very basics on my own. As a middle schooler, I watched programming tutorials online, bought textbooks, and went through trial and error repeatedly. With each programming session, I definitely felt an improvement, gaining a sense of fulfillment that was vastly different from the monotonous daily life I had been leading. For that alone, I am deeply grateful to Emily for teaching me programming. Since high school, I competed in prestigious programming contests, winning numerous grand prizes.
We get it. You're amazing. So please just stop showing up.
As I frequented these competitions, familiar faces became common. The top programmers, naturally, ranked high, so it was inevitable that my name became well known. I kept coming out on top in the competitions over and over. The competitors who came close but couldn't beat me probably saw me as a thorn in their side. Cut it out. Don't blame me for your lack of skills. I dismissed those comments as pure envy and continued competing in the contests, winning grand prizes until I was satisfied. Because I kept winning, some people viewed me with jealousy and hostility, but the majority recognized me as an exceptionally talented programmer. Achievements don't lie. Ever since middle school, when I first got interested in programming, I've been determined to beat anyone in my path. I pride myself on that effort. I'm truly a wizard of programming. There was no way I wouldn't help Emily, the one who introduced me to programming. That's why I immediately applied when Emily's company was looking for programmers. I wanted to be there for her. I've always wanted to express my gratitude to her. It's understandable she didn't recognize me. I had changed a lot since middle school, with a vastly different appearance and hairstyle. I finally feel like I've been able to repay you, I said, feeling embarrassed and looking away from her gaze.
Come to think of it, I vaguely remember a kid whose bangs were so long they covered his eyes, yet he easily mastered complex programming tasks.
That was definitely me. Back in middle school, I felt uneasy unless my eyes were hidden behind my bangs.
Hearing that is quite sentimental. It was my teaching that led you to programming.
That's right. You better be prepared, because I'm going to follow you as long as this world keeps turning. Contrary to Emily's and my success, Jessica's company couldn't find competent programmers and gradually spiraled downward. Essentially, Emily's leadership and my technical skills had been the backbone of the company, and without us, it was doomed. And that became reality, as Jessica's company eventually was driven to bankruptcy. Meanwhile, Emily and I steadily grew our team and expanded the company's size. Correspondingly, our relationship also heated up, and now we are inseparable, both at work and in private. The one thing I want to say is that love is a powerful force.
The pua always come last, huh? Must been nice to have all that free time.
Hayden said that with a look of disdain as I picked up the reservation ticket at the bank. It was the end of the year, and the bank was incredibly busy. Making a reservation in advance was recommended, but my schedule wasn't confirmed until the last minute. Therefore, I had to go there in person. Hayden was proud to be a banker at the main branch. Despite being at work, he proudly boasted to me about his extensive knowledge of money and how much money he had handled so far. I don't have a single good memory of Hayden. It felt ridiculous to deposit my important money in a bank where such a classmate worked, and for once, I spoke up strongly against him. Cut it out. If you say any more, I'll withdraw everything. Hayden laughed loudly without concern for the people around us and said,
It's probably just $10,000, right?
But just then, my number was called. I told the female staff at the counter, I'm withdrawing all my $500 million. Soon, the branch manager, pale-faced, came to the booth where I was sitting. He sharply reprimanded Hayden, who was confused about what had happened.
Hayden has been terribly rude. Hayden, apologize now.
However, I did not change my mind. I withdrew all my $500 million and deposited it in another bank. This drastically changed Hayden's life, which had been going smoothly until then. My name is Michael Thompson, 32 years old. Although I'm in my 30s, I have no experience working for a company. After graduating high school, I lived a carefree life without working for a while. However, recently, I've started to change my mindset and earn my own money. The one who spoke harshly to me was Hayden Turner. He's also 32 years old. As you might guess, Hayden and I were classmates in middle school. Our encounter at the bank was coincidental, but we weren't close during our middle school days.
You got some really nice sneakers there. Rich people are different.
Hayden would say that mockingly as he chased after me on the way to school, making it his daily routine. At that time, I was wearing my newly bought sneakers. I chose them for their comfort, as I would use them for the 20-minute walk to and from school and for physical education classes. They weren't cheap, but they weren't so expensive as to warrant his sarcasm. They're nice shoes, but the price is average. There are others wearing the same pair. Indeed, there were many classmates who wore sneakers from the same brand, albeit with slight differences in design. However, Hayden had only one goal. He wanted to outdo me. Back then, Hayden was walking the path of an elite middle school student under the guidance of his enthusiastic parents. He started going to cram school as soon as he entered elementary school. Thanks to studying in advance, he always ranked high in his grades. He was also athletic and not bad looking. Hayden was quite the standout in our grade. He believed he'd be someone amazing, shining in a glamorous world someday. It's a typical teenage dream, really. Hayden truly believed it from the bottom of his heart. His future dreams, as written in essays, varied over time but always involved high-profile professions, like being a celebrity, professional soccer player, or the president. Hayden longed for a glamorous world and sought attention more than anyone else. On the contrary, I hated standing out above all else. During class, I never raised my hand unless called upon by the teacher. I knew raising my hand showed initiative and could work in favor of my grades. However, I wanted to distance myself from the competitive society and live a peaceful life.
Michael, considering your future, it would be good to get some experience speaking in front of people. If it's too much, at least try raising your hand in class. It's a waste not to given how well you do on written tests.
I was once told this by a teacher who was concerned about my overly passive attitude. Schools these days not only focus on test scores, but also on students' initiative in class. The teacher was worried because, despite my high test scores, my lack of participation was pulling me down. Ms. Nelson, I'm really not worried about my grades. Being the center of attention makes me stressed and sick. Actually, just being in the classroom is all I can manage. I already have my own plan, so please let me keep doing things my way. I honestly told my teacher. It's somewhat well known now, but there are always a few students in a class who struggle with reading social cues, or who are overly sensitive to others' words due to innate brain differences. I was one of them. Trying too hard to fit in could eventually make it impossible for me to even enter the classroom. So, I decided to live at my own pace from the start. My parents, having observed me since I was young, understood what I was trying to say. However, the teacher didn't seem to fully grasp it. Well, fate has its ironies. Despite not seeking it, I ended up in the spotlight. One morning, a middle school student found himself being mobbed by the media as he entered the school gates.
Excuse me, could I interview you for a moment?
Hayden, ever the attention seeker, was unfortunately caught by a journalist from a famous weekly magazine. For Hayden, who loves to be the center of attention, standing in front of a camera was the ultimate opportunity. He was thrilled to be in front of the camera. There was a festival happening near the school soon. Hayden assumed the interview would be about that. However, The questions were completely different from what he expected.
Jack goes to this school, right? What kind of student is he? Is he a central figure in music classes? Does he write or perform songs at school?
The journalist bombarded Hayden with questions, but Hayden was clueless. He had no idea who they were asking about.
Who is Jack? We don't have anyone like that here.
He gave the journalist a surprise for not knowing who that was.
You know Michael, right? It's said that he's Jack.
Hayden was puzzled by the sudden mention of a celebrity's name. Jack was a lyricist and composer. He provided songs to a rapidly rising idol group, but never showed his face. As he was wrapped in mystery, the media was desperate to uncover his identity.
No way. He doesn't have that kind of talent. He barely even sings in music class. Sorry, but I have to go. I'm out of time.
Hayden refused to believe that Jack, the hitmaker stirring up the public, could actually be me. Hayden had always dreamed of a glamorous world and yearned for social success more than anyone else. What if I had already realized that dream in the world of music ahead of him? If that was true, it would be nothing but a disgrace for him. That day, an emergency assembly was called for all students in the gym. It was clear that the commotion was about the media prowling around the school building. The principal first explained the situation.
Today has been difficult with all the questions. Those interviewed might guess, but this is all because of the reports about Jack. Your homeroom teachers will give you more details.
Prompted by the principal, my homeroom teacher took the stage. She seemed bewildered by the sudden turn of events, looking utterly exhausted. She looked as if she hadn't slept at all.
Recently, a popular idol group's song provider was revealed by a weekly magazine to be Michael, a student in my class. His picture was taken secretly. Michael has only been known as Jack, keeping his identity private. As you know, his hits have been very successful. The search for his real identity has intensified, leading to public disclosure. This situation might continue for a while. Please don't accept any interviews. Even small comments can become a big deal. Just say that the school has banned interviews, and you'll be fine. Also, you might have many questions for Michael, but he's very tired now. Please give him some space.
There was one exception. That is Hayden.
Are you really providing songs for those idols? That group is part of a major agency, and you have no connection to them at all.
During lunch break, Hayden would come over to me and start talking at me rapidly. A seemingly talentless classmate had suddenly become famous. Moreover, this person is celebrated as a genius brimming with innate talent. Hayden, always wanting to stand out, must have felt jealous. It was becoming difficult for him to maintain his composure. Sorry, I can talk about the details. I don't even know what to do myself, so please give me a break.
Come on, don't act all high and mighty. We're classmates, aren't we? How can you prove you wrote those songs? The lyrics deeply express a girl's inner feelings. There's no way you could write something like that. Are you using a ghostwriter or something?
I was seen as nondescript student. I understood why Hayden might think that way. The songs I wrote for the popular idol group express the emotional turmoil and conflicts of teenage girls. It would be hard for anyone, not just Hayden, to imagine that I was the one who wrote the lyrics for such songs. The idol group I provided songs for was initially a local act, quietly doing their thing. There was a time when they called for song submissions to enrich their repertoire of original music. As someone who enjoyed composing music as a hobby, I applied on a whim at my parents' suggestion. Before I knew it, my submission had made it to the final selection, and astonishingly, was chosen to be released as a single. It must have resonated with the times. Before I knew it, the idol group had risen to national fame, carrying several songs I had created. I provided about 10 songs, all of which became major hits. Some were even chosen for commercial jingles. The fan base was mainly teenagers, but the songs also resonated with people over 40, reminding them of their bittersweet youth. Everyone would probably be disappointed to learn that the person who released such songs into the world struggles with social interactions and lacks any semblance of sociability. I always wanted to stay out of the spotlight and not ruin the song's image, which is why I continued to provide music anonymously just for this idol group. You can think I'm using a ghostwriter if you want. I don't care who gets credited. I'd rather someone else take over. My indifference towards being part of the glamorous probably irked him even more. From that moment, Hayden suddenly began to adopt a condescending attitude towards me. The worst of his attitude came during the unforgettable preparations for the cultural festival.
Michael, with all those hits you've made, you must be a great singer. You should do the solo for the choir.
He said that, knowing fully well I wasn't good at it. I'm tone deaf. You sing much better than me, Hayden. Hayden indeed had a good singing voice. He's the type who shines when performing songs at gatherings. Normally, he would be the first to volunteer whenever there was an opportunity to sing in front of others. However, that year, Hayden was determined to make me sing. Perhaps because I was recognized as a genius who produced hit songs, he wanted to embarrass me by having me perform a song off-key in front of others. Ultimately, our music teacher caught wind of the commotion and decided to remove the solo part. Even after this incident, I continued to write songs for a while. I knew the 5 members had been dreaming of entertainment industry success since their local idol days, diligently practicing after school. My songs resonated with many because they reflected the members' innermost feelings. I didn't want to step back just because my information had been leaked. However, the situation suddenly changed. The idol group ended up disbanding. It was a decision resulting from various factors intertwined with their fame. Being primarily middle schoolers, they had reached the age to consider high school. And with national recognition, their freedom to act and speak diminished. With success came losses. The more famous they became, the more conflicted they felt about continuing as they were. The management considered keeping the group name but changing the members. However, longtime fans resisted the total member change, unable to accept it. The complications arising from my role as a songwriter, impacting my middle school life, contributed to the decision for the members to graduate in a final live performance, leading to the group's disbandment. The media couldn't possibly know the detailed circumstances. After the disbandment was announced, rumors spread that Jack had hit a slump, unable to produce songs as before. forcing the group to disband. I didn't refute these claims. Afterwards, I stopped making music. Regardless of the reason, being just a normal middle school student again was what made me happiest. Hayden seemed to be the most pleased with my change in circumstances. Despite never being close, he'd now eagerly approach me.
The entertainment industry isn't easy to succeed in, right? You can't just make money that easily. Plus, you're going to a part-time high school. What are you going to do there now that you've lost your songwriting job?
I've always wanted to go to the part-time high school. It has nothing to do with songwriting.
Don't make excuses. A loss is a loss. Just admit it. It's too late for entrance exams now, right? Poor thing, you've really messed up your life.
Hayden looked at me triumphantly, completely misunderstanding the situation. I get stressed in group settings and wanted to live at my own pace. So, I just chose a part-time high school. Hayden assumed I chose part-time schooling, hoping for a songwriting career. Hayden, who had attended cram school since he was young, was set to attend the second-best public high school locally. Incidentally, Hayden had to give up on attending the top-ranked high school because, unfortunately, his academic abilities fell short. A girl from our middle school got into that top school. That shifted Hayden's jealousy towards her, freeing me from his attention. The part-time high school was home to students from various generations and backgrounds. While the annoyances of group life were not entirely absent, I managed to lead a reasonably fulfilling student life. As this new life became routine, Hayden gradually faded from my memory. Over a decade later, I unexpectedly encountered Hayden again. This happened when I visited the main branch of the bank to withdraw some of the money from my account. Both Hayden and I were in our 30s by then. The atmosphere had changed quite a bit since our middle school days. However, Hayden's thick-arched eyebrows and his somewhat disdainful attitude remained the same as before. As for me, perhaps because I was dressed in a casual, almost student-like manner, Hayden recognized me right away. He approached me with a triumphant look on his face.
The poor always last, huh? You must have plenty of time.
I was speechless while holding the reservation ticket at the bank. That's not the kind of comment a bank employee should make. Despite understanding his position, Hayden spoke softly, ensuring others couldn't hear. The bank was bustling at year-end. There were plenty account openings, deposits, withdrawals, and consultations. It was especially crowded at the investment advice counter. People wanted to grow their winter bonuses or secure funds for retirement, and bank employees suggested investing after seeing savings account balances. They were perhaps trying to guide customers through financial products. Individuals who appeared to be bank employees were stationed throughout the place, one of whom was Hayden. Given the congestion during the end-of-year and New Year period, the bank had recommended making reservations online. Due to work constraints, I couldn't finalize my schedule in time, so I decided to visit the bank without an appointment.
Here's a number ticket. Just follow the order, and that'll be fine.
I ended up making a face that clearly showed my annoyance. Unexpectedly, Hayden began to talk about his career. He must be trying to assert his dominance. He boasted about himself with great enthusiasm, though no one had asked him to.
I never thought I'd make it from a branch to a main bank employee. With so many multinational corporations around here, I often have to communicate in multiple languages. It turns out there aren't many people who are quick-witted, fluent in more than one language, and have extensive financial knowledge like me, even in a bank this size.
He bragged about his abilities even while on duty. According to Hayden, he had also built a decent personal financial portfolio.
Well, my financial assets are only about $1 million. I could save more, but I end up spending it on annual overseas trips. I consider it an investment in experience.
I had visited the bank that day with the sole intention of withdrawing a portion of cash from my account. I had only opened the account because an acquaintance asked me to. I had absolutely no emotional attachment to the bank. Furthermore, I discovered that a classmate, in whom I had not a shred of trust, was working at the main branch. Being treated with such disdain made the idea of keeping an account there seem utterly foolish. "I'll withdraw everything," I said that, causing Hayden to burst into laughter. Suddenly, he blurted out loudly,
"It's probably just $10,000, right?"
His words drew the attention of other customers. My embarrassment peaked at that point. Fortunately, it was then my turn. I informed the staff at the counter, "I'll be withdrawing all $500 million and closing my account with this bank today." The female staff's complexion changed. She tried to persuade me not to close my account. However, my resolve was firm. Sensing this, the staff went to the back. The branch manager, pale-faced, approached my booth. He was urging a confused Hayden behind me.
Hayden has been extremely rude. Now, what are you doing? Apologize as well.
Even if you say so, have I caused any problem?
Don't you understand? Do you not know who Mr. Thompson is? He's a private investor who influences the Japanese economy. We're his main bank, holding $500 million, and you.
The branch manager and Hayden's direct supervisor were unaware that a mid-career bank employee could be so disrespectful to a customer. Detailed client information hadn't been shared with Hayden, who had just transferred from a branch. The manager, along with Hayden, apologized repeatedly. But I didn't change my mind. I transferred all $500 million to another bank with trustworthy employees. Hayden offered to apologize in person several times, but I declined. About half a year passed without seeing Hayden. Suddenly, it seems Hayden was severely reprimanded by the upper management for losing a $500 million deposit. After closing the account, there was no need to speak with anyone from that bank again. Despite feeling sorry for him, I ignored Hayden's calls by pretending not to be home. I never thought I'd see Hayden again. However, that wasn't the case. A few months after our encounter at the bank, I once again ran into Hayden by chance. The place of our reunion was an ordinary pub, quite unfit for someone with Hayden's elitist consciousness. I was there to attend a certain celebration party. Arriving earlier than planned, I entered the pub intending to wait in a reserved private room. That's when I noticed a man drinking a highball at a corner counter seat. It was Hayden. I hesitated about whether to approach him. At that moment, Hayden looked in my direction.
"Aren't you Michael?"
"Long time no see. Drinking alone here doesn't seem like you." The moment I saw Hayden's face, I was at a loss for words. His face was unshaven. He probably hadn't visited a barber in a long while. His hair was grown out and disheveled. The confident expression that once filled his face was now completely gone.
Seeing me now, you must be surprised at how much I've changed. You're probably thinking I look too disheveled to be a banker.
Hayden hinted at his current state from the smell of alcohol, indicating he had been drinking since noon. Not knowing exactly what situation Hayden was in, I found myself unable to say anything and just silently stared at his face. Then, Hayden downed his highball in one gulp, glared at me, and asked in a rough voice,
"Why did you have $500 million in your bank account that time? Sure, you released hit songs in middle school, but after the idol group disbanded, you haven't been involved in music at all, right? And you went to a part-time high school. With that kind of educational background, you shouldn't have had the chance to get your hands on $500 million. How did that even happen?"
Hayden's hand, clutching the empty glass, was trembling slightly. His tone was laden with frustration, jealousy, sadness, despair, and regret. My honest preference was to keep my personal matters private. However, seeing Hayden possibly on the verge of breaking down, I was worried for him. What Hayden needed was to accept the gap between his ideals and reality, and acknowledging his limits while moving forward. I decided to share my story. As you know, I was involved in music production in middle school. I'm not making music anymore. However, I still have a decent income. The songs released back then are occasionally covered even now. They're sung in events and used as background music in TV shows. Thankfully, I receive a substantial amount in royalties every year. I'm terrible at socializing and gave up on the idea of working for a company. So, after graduating high school, I've been living quietly on those royalties. I can say I work as hard as most people here, but in exchange, I've been volunteering. My parents were worried about my weak social connections and suggested I resume music activities. But, having been burnt by the music industry turmoil in middle school, I couldn't bring myself to enter the entertainment world again. Then, through acquaintances, my parents introduced me to a volunteer organization.
This organization supports children with disabilities or those who struggle in school. They recruit college student volunteers to teach them and organize events to help them participate in society.
I was welcomed by Carla White. She's an 80-year-old woman, active in volunteer work. Carla had a son with disabilities who passed away in his 30s after a long illness. Wanting to help children facing difficulties, she and her husband founded the organization in their 50s, using their personal funds. I found myself involved in the unfamiliar world of volunteer work by chance. Initially, I was just participating out of consideration for my parents. However, a request from Carla changed my perspective entirely.
Michael, you can write lyrics and compose music, right? If it's possible, could you create a song that everyone participating in our activities can sing together? We'd like a simple, positive song that even children with disabilities can easily sing.
I hadn't composed any music since stepping away from the music world. Being manipulated by adults and bearing the brunt of jealousy had made life difficult. Attempting to compose brought back painful memories. But I thought a theme song for the volunteer group, sung among ourselves, would be fine. Agreeing, I spent a month completing a certain song. Before starting volunteer activities, everyone began singing the song I created. Its melody line was simple, with little fluctuation, something anyone could seemingly create. However, I realized the song I created played a role in uniting people of different generations, genders, and family backgrounds. Gradually, I began to spend more time composing music, playing piano accompaniments at choir competitions organized by the volunteer group, and creating music for stages and commercials.
Your volunteer activities and that $500 million in the account, how do they connect? And why can you create music? Did you apprentice under a musician? Despite becoming so famous, why did you quit making music? I can't understand anything you do or think.
Hayden, dreaming of a glamorous world, was understandably curious about how I succeeded in music and came to possess $500 million. Ever since I was little, I couldn't blend in with groups and often found myself alone. My dad, worried about me, bought me a keyboard. It started as a toy, but soon I was creating my own music. Before I knew it, my room was filled with instruments and recording equipment. I became so engrossed in making music that I'd stay up late into the night. Music wasn't about fame for me, it was a way to overcome loneliness. As my music became known, I ended up more isolated in class. The adults who approached me were interest-worthy, making me feel even lonelier, so I withdrew. Despite the unfortunate ending, I was grateful for the steady stream of royalties.
And that resulted in $500 million.
Half of it came from investments. The other half was donated by Carla before she passed. Carla White had died of old age a few years ago. Her biggest concern had always been the volunteer organization she started with her husband in memory of their son. Carla's husband was a well-known landowner in the area. As a result, Carla inherited a substantial amount of assets. However, she had no children to inherit these assets. Therefore, before her passing, she designated me as the head of the organization and donated the majority of her assets to it. Right now, we're constructing an educational exchange facility to increase opportunities for children with disabilities to excel in society. $250 million was from Carla, and $250 million was my contribution. This $500 million is more about the sentiment than the money. All the hardships, worries, conflicts, and of course, the unspeakable joys and sorrows are ingrained in it. After hearing my story, Hayden looked down silently. He was perhaps overwhelmed by the unexpected turn of events.
Michael, what's happening? It's time.
A woman in her early 30s called me from the reserved private room. Today marked a pause in the continuous meetings for the construction of the educational exchange facility. Therefore, we decided to have a drinking party with the members of the volunteer organization. Actually, she's my wife, a former member of that idol group, who has supported Carla's activities since her teens. She became famous as an idol, but always felt something was missing. She says she's most fulfilled now. Fame doesn't necessarily fulfill everything. nor does having money guarantee you can have everything. Hayden's measure of happiness was always about whether he could stand above others. However, I wanted him to realize that this isn't necessary. As time pressed on, I left Hayden with a "see you" and moved on. Later, I gradually got the facility connecting disabled children with society on track. Our learning support activities for non-attending children garnered media attention, featuring on TV and in magazines. Despite this, I remained uncomfortable with the limelight. So I had my wife, acting as my assistant, handle the interviews in my place. I learned about Hayden's whereabouts at a middle school class reunion. After leaving the bank due to our incident, he had been unemployed for a while but had recently started job hunting. Surprisingly, he was applying mainly to pub chains, not aiming for a major corporate shift. During his unemployed days, encouragement from various people he met while drinking at pubs helped him regain the will to restart his life. He aspired to create a space of comfort for those struggling to find their place. He hopes to work at a pub as training towards that goal. Hayden seemed to have lost his fixation on being an elite, standing above others. Although Hayden and I originally had opposite dispositions, the places we find ourselves in now might be surprisingly close. The day we can share our dreams might not be too far off. I felt I might have found a future best friend, a notion I thought would never apply to myself.
You're a disgrace to society, a useless person even at the head office. That's why you were dumped here. Just go home.
I thought I was ignoring it, but these words from the branch manager broke something inside of me. My name is John Sullivan. Since I was a kid, I've always been good at studying. I graduated from a prestigious university with excellent grades and landed a job at a major bank. Over the years, I've been successfully navigating through my career, gaining valuable experience along the way. I was also blessed with a good marriage, marrying a kind woman I met. Our son grew up healthy, and I could say my life was going pretty smoothly. Then one day, I was assigned to a branch with a very high turnover rate and nothing but bad rumors. I went there with my guard up, wondering what was happening, but I found a branch manager who constantly harassed the staff and was always quick to show off his power. Be careful, especially those from the head office become easy targets. A person from the branch secretly warned me, and sure enough, the branch manager targeted me right away. He gives me an endless amount of work, only says things that are convenient for him, and blames others for his mistakes. I was impressed with how much he could think of to harass people. Even though it's work, dealing with such a branch manager every day is exhausting. I couldn't help but vent at home, but my heart was soothed by my wife, who prepared a warm cup of tea and said, "You really had a tough day, huh?" and by the smile of my son as he climbed onto my lap. For my wife and son, and to protect my family, dealing with one or two troublesome people didn't seem like a big deal. However, it's hard when it starts affecting my family. Although I had taken a paid leave in advance for my son's preschool recital today, the branch manager gave me a call saying, "Come to the office now." I couldn't help but sigh. Luckily, the recital had already ended, but I was looking forward to having lunch with the family, as we had made a reservation. but I couldn't ignore the branch manager's call, and I explained to my son on the way back that I had to go to work soon. My son, looking dissatisfied, said, "I guess it can't be helped if it's for work, but you promised." This made me even sadder, especially knowing that the call was probably not that important. But then, I noticed something odd about my son's expression. He seemed to be looking behind me, and after staring for a while, he pointed and said, "Doesn't that grandma look strange?" I turned around in response and was shocked. On a road with little traffic, there was an elderly lady unsteadily making her way onto the street. Her expression was dark and troubled, and she wasn't looking around at all. I saw a car speeding up from a distance, and before I knew it, I ran towards the lady shouting, "Watch out!" I pulled her arm, making sure not to let her fall and to support her in case something happened. As we moved away from the road, just then, a car drove past, and a voice yelled from the car, "Watch out, idiot!" I was so focused on the elderly lady's safety that I accidentally tripped and fell to my knees, and she also ended up sitting down on the spot. We were both stunned for a moment, but then people gathered around, sensing something had happened. My son rushed to me, clutching my clothes, and asked, "Dad, are you okay? And is she okay, too?" I calmed down and patted his head, saying, "I'm fine." The elderly lady still seemed stunned, but after I repeatedly asked, "Are you okay? Do you have any pain?" she finally looked at me. "Are you okay? You shouldn't jump out into the road like that." My son also looked up at her, worried.
Oh, I'm fine. Did you stop me, young man?
She said, finally calming down a bit, and bowed her head to me. "I'm glad you're safe. Sorry for pulling you so suddenly. I hope you're not hurt," I said, and then realized I had thrown my bag in the moment. "Oh, my bag," I said as I looked around, and then my son pointed out, over there, to where my bag was lying a little distance away. Some documents inside had scattered, so my son helped me pick them up, and the old lady helped with a few pages too. "I'm really sorry. Thank you for saving me. Are you by any chance from Skybank? Can I ask your name?" the elderly lady said, looking at the documents. "Yes, I'm John Sullivan from Skybank."
"That's my dad. He's a kind man."
After I introduced myself, my son unexpectedly said something quite embarrassing, and I found myself wryly smiling. She was also having a cheerful conversation with my son, saying, "Is that so? He saved me today as well." I had been worried about her because she looked so gloomy when she was wandering earlier, but now she seemed to be in good spirits. However, as she took a step forward, she grimaced a bit. "I thought I was okay, but maybe I twisted my ankle," said the elderly lady while checking her slightly swollen ankle. I quickly had her sit down nearby. Then I said, "I have a car close by. I'll go get it and take you to the hospital," pointing towards the parking lot. Initially, she said, "It's not that painful. I can walk on my own," but after hearing my son's warm words, "Don't push yourself if it hurts," she nodded with a wry smile. Later, after explaining the situation to my wife who was waiting in the car, I took the elderly lady to the hospital and then returned to the office. As expected, I was scolded for being late. Although I explained the situation, he never listened to me. The issue I was called in for turned out to be nothing significant, and my day off was just wasted. The latter half of my day was disappointing, but I was satisfied thinking about having seen my son's recital and helping the elderly lady. I went to bed feeling fulfilled. A few days later, I was back at the branch, listening to the branch managers yelling. He had made a mistake with the schedule, and for some reason, he was blaming me for miscommunicating it. This was happening just after opening, behind the counter. I thought about how it would look to customers seeing him like this. I was growing tired of seeing him, but tried to stay calm as I endured his lecture.
All you do is complain. You're a disgrace to society, a useless person even at the head office. That's why you were dumped here. Just go home.
I had been trying to ignore him, but those words from the branch manager broke something inside of me. This guy is truly hopeless. That's what I thought as I firmly stared at the branch manager and opened my mouth. I understand. I'm quitting my job at this branch. The moment I clearly stated that, I heard a tapping sound from behind. When I turned around, I realized that there was already a customer in the branch, unnoticed due to the branch manager's loud voice. It was the elderly lady from the other day, the tapping sound coming from her cane. "Hello, young man. Thank you for the other day," she greeted me with a smile, then turned to the branch manager with a stern face.
I'm Dawson. I was supposed to visit this afternoon. I've been listening to your conversation, and it seems you got our appointment time wrong, branch manager.
Both the branch manager and I reacted with surprise. The scolding I had received was about a morning and afternoon schedule mix-up, and it turned out the appointment was with Mrs. Dawson.
I was fine with either morning or afternoon. My foot's almost healed, so I was out for a walk and saw you, which made me come in. Then I was greeted by that yelling.
The branch manager, unaware that Mrs. Dawson and I knew each other, stood there with his mouth agape. I'm old, but I have a good memory and always take notes of my phone calls. Look, it says I called the branch manager, she said, showing a note from her purse. It was neatly written, "Call with branch manager, 1 p.m. at the bank."
Branch manager, I made an appointment with you, and it's embarrassing as a professional to blame someone else for your own mistake.
As the branch manager was confronted with evidence, he couldn't yell as he did with me and kept opening and closing his mouth in disbelief. While staring at the branch manager, Mrs. Dawson pointed firmly at me.
Moreover, I wanted this person to be my account manager. That's why I made an appointment for today. If he quits, I don't want to entrust my money to someone who shifts blame onto others. I have $50 million deposited, and I'll withdraw it all right now. So please prepare it immediately.
To my surprise, Mrs. Dawson was a major client of our Sky Bank. The branch manager turned pale at her words.
Please reconsider, I beg you.
He pleaded desperately. Despite his pleas, Mrs. Dawson insisted. I don't care, prepare it now. I held my phone for a while, but when the branch manager saw he couldn't persuade Mrs. Dawson, he turned his gaze to me.
John, please convince her to reconsider.
He pleaded, thinking, does this man have no shame? I replied, I'm resigning from this branch, so I can't interfere. The branch manager was in a state of panic, and Mrs. Dawson and I were waiting for him to calm down when the entrance door opened, and an elderly man entered. I quickly checked and approached the customer and greeted him. "Thank you for coming, Nolan." At my words, the branch manager froze, staring at the visitor Nolan. Nolan is an executive officer at the main bank of Sky Bank, a name and face the branch manager couldn't possibly not know. Ignoring the branch manager, Nolan first looked at me.
"You've had a hard time, John. It seems the situation is as I was told."
As I nodded affirmatively to Nolan, he first greeted Mrs. Dawson.
"I apologize for the disrespect shown by our staff member. Please accept my apologies."
Mrs. Dawson hadn't looked at him till then, but she finally turned to Nolan.
"And you are?"
"My apologies. I am Nolan, an executive officer at Sky Bank's head office. I came here upon receiving a call from John."
Mrs. Dawson looked at me, and I nodded affirmatively, conveying, "It's okay."
"Regarding John here, it was my decision to have him assigned to this branch, and he will not be leaving the bank. Please, could you calm your anger? Of course, he will continue to be your point of contact."
Nolan's explanation made Mrs. Dawson understand the situation. She looked at me again, so I nodded and returned a smile, saying, "I'm okay."
"So that's how it is. I originally planned to give the withdrawn money to this young man, but if he's okay with it, I'll keep it deposited in this bank."
"You can have it," Mrs. Dawson continued, but I quickly shook my head in response. I couldn't possibly accept such a large sum. "Yes, that would be appreciated. Thank you, and I look forward to continuing our relationship," I said, smiling to Mrs. Dawson. The branch manager, on the other hand, was completely left out of the conversation and listened, blushing and turning pale. Every time he tried to say something, Nolan's stern look silenced him. After saying goodbye to Mrs. Dawson and promising to meet again later, Nolan and I approached the branch manager, who was now sitting despondently behind us.
"You probably already know this, but I had requested John to come to this branch for an internal investigation. The numerous instances of harassment you've inflicted on the staff and the many people you've driven to resignation. We have all the evidence. Just give up and wait for what's to come."
Nolan's voice thundered like a storm, and the branch manager completely collapsed. Yes, I was assigned to this branch after being asked by Executive Director Nolan to investigate this branch, which has a bad reputation due to its high turnover rate. The incident occurred just as evidence of the branch manager's misconduct had been gathered and the investigation was about to conclude. I was afraid of losing a major client, so I immediately contacted Nolan, who was nearby. I had no idea that Mrs. Dawson was one of our major clients. It was truly fortunate to have learned this before leaving the branch. Afterward, the branch manager was exposed for numerous wrongdoings based on the evidence I had gathered. It turned out that more people than imagined had been harassed simply for not resigning. The branch manager completely lost any way out. He was demoted, which was considered better than being fired, but he couldn't endure the cold stares and eventually resigned, as I heard through the grapevine. I returned to the head office as my investigation completed. My achievement was highly evaluated by the executives, and I continued on an elite career path. I also grew close to Mrs. Dawson, our major client, and during our interactions, she told me why she had done such a thing on the street that day. She had felt unbearably lonely after her son's family, including her grandchildren, moved overseas for work. She had refused to join them, feeling too old to live abroad, but she was overwhelmed by loneliness. She had thought, if something happened to her, maybe her son would come back out of concern. Following her heart, Mrs. Dawson had aimlessly walked onto the road where I saved her. It's scary to think what might have happened if my son and I hadn't been talking there that day. I'm truly glad we were able to help her. And for Mrs. Dawson, being saved that day apparently changed her world. Reflecting on how I had helped and even taken her to the hospital, and how she had enjoyed talking with a child about the same age as her grandchildren, Mrs. Dawson felt ashamed for having considered causing worry to her family. She realized what she did was wrong and regretted being stuck at home and feeling lonely. Grateful for the change in perspective I had given her, she wanted to repay the kindness and contacted the bank. Since that day, Mrs. Dawson's demeanor changed from being gloomy to bright. She started communicating directly with her sons, expressing her feelings, and increased her outings, laughing as she told me this. Her sons also said to her, "We're happy you talked to us instead of keeping silent. We can come back immediately, but we'll keep in touch more often." Apparently, these words have become a support for Mrs. Dawson. She said, "Still, I feel lonely on a daily basis. It would be nice if you could keep me company." To which I replied, "How about we go out somewhere with my son next time?" Mrs. Dawson seemed a bit surprised but delighted and agreed, leading to us developing a relationship not just professionally but personally as well. In getting close to Mrs. Dawson, I also communicated by phone with her son, who expressed his gratitude, saying, "It's thanks to you guys that my mom seems happier recently. Thank you." My son, who usually doesn't get to see his grandparents because they're far away, has become quite close to Mrs. Dawson, almost like real family. We also quickly became friends with Mrs. Dawson's son and his wife when they visited, and our families began socializing together. Mrs. Dawson no longer shows a gloomy face. She greets us with a smile every time we meet. I watched our family's peaceful smiles, feeling the importance of cherishing bonds with others, and resolved to continue valuing these connections in my life.